Hello there guys, I hope you are having a good day. Now, apparently Deontay Wilder is in amazing physical shape for the third Tyson Fury fight, and their training camps are only just beginning for that fight because obviously they will fight on December 19th in Las Vegas at the Raiders Stadium. That is what is being planned for this third fight between Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. Now, it was Richard Akpayori who said that Deontay Wilder is in great spirits, he's in great shape, ready for this fight. This is what he had to say. Based on what I know, the only person that can beat Deontay right now is Deontay. He will beat Fury if he sticks to the game plan from his coaching staff, and I know he has the physical tools. Right now, he's in amazing physical shape. That I can tell you for sure. You will see a completely different Deontay mentally and physically in the ring. When the bell rings again for the third fight, that I can tell you. Now, first of all, Richard Akpayori alluded to Deontay Wilder's training staff and his coaching team. Now, is his training team any different to what it was before? We don't believe so. I mean, we heard that maybe Joe Goosen was going in to help Deontay Wilder, but no further advances on that. So at the moment, it's just Jay Diaz and Mark Breland as well, and obviously some of the other coaching staff he had before. But ultimately, it's the same setup he had for the first two Tyson Fury fights. So it's not going to be much different for Deontay Wilder. So what will he learn? What will he do different? I remember Anthony Joshua brought in Angel Fernandez and different coaches to help him prepare for the Andy Ruiz Jr. rematch. And that did benefit Anthony Joshua. Not just Joshua, but Rob McCracken as well, who realised that he could see more from outside of the ring watching Anthony Joshua on the pads rather than taking Anthony Joshua on the pads himself. So that kind of setup worked for Anthony Joshua. Now, I'm not expecting Deontay Wilder to do the exact same thing as Anthony Joshua because that won't necessarily work. But the fact that the coaching staff and their game plan and tactics has been alluded to by a sparring partner of Deontay Wilder and a training partner, does that mean that Deontay Wilder believes he has the game plan to beat Tyson Fury? And if so, what will that be? Well, what Deontay Wilder does need to do, and what is most important, is to stop Tyson Fury doing whatever he wants, because that is what Tyson Fury done in the first fight. He done anything he wanted to do. If he wanted to force Deontay Wilder back, he'd done that. If he wanted to land a jab, he'd done that. If he wanted to land those right hands, those looping right hands as well, he'd done that. So what Deontay Wilder needs to make sure he is doing is preventing what Tyson Fury is doing, because Fury is doing that to Wilder himself. He is pushing Wilder back, forcing Wilder on the back foot, and therefore trying to take away his right hand by positioning himself to the left of Deontay Wilder, meaning he has to reach with that right hand, and ultimately that takes the sting out of the punch, meaning that Deontay Wilder doesn't have the same kind of power as he would do if he was walking Tyson Fury onto the punch. Because that is what Deontay Wilder often does. He often steps back into the space, allows his opponent to move forward, then he shoots the right hand. And that is why it is so devastating, because it's not just the power in the punch, but it's the fact that his opponent is walking onto the punch and bringing their own momentum forward onto Deontay Wilder's power shots. Tyson Fury didn't do that. Even though he was walking forward, he never gave Deontay Wilder the time and the space to set his feet and set up that right hand, because you see Deontay Wilder do it. He checks that right hand, he draws it back to his hip, and then throws it. Tyson Fury never allowed him to do that. He was preventing it the whole fight. So while Tyson Fury was, yes, on the front foot pushing Deontay Wilder back, he was also doing what he does best, which is avoiding shots and preventing them from happening. And this fight wasn't just Tyson Fury going on the front foot as opposed to being on the back foot and avoiding shots and changing his balance to be landing power shots. It wasn't just that. It was the fact that Tyson Fury is so physically imposing and he's right there in front of Deontay Wilder, pushing him back, reaching out with those long legs, making sure his feet are in range of Deontay Wilder, making sure that Deontay Wilder knows he is there, stepping heavy with that lead foot. So Deontay Wilder knows he is there, sees the physical presence of Tyson Fury, and therefore sees no other option than to go back. So that is what Tyson Fury was doing. But what Deontay Wilder needs to do in order to counter that is land hard, heavy shots, and often. And yes, I admit there were times in that second fight where Deontay Wilder did get that right hand off, but there was never a moment where it caused any effect on Tyson Fury, because he was backing up, and Tyson Fury, as I said, was positioned to the side of Deontay Wilder, so Wilder was reaching with that right hand, taking away the power from that shot. What Deontay Wilder needs to do in the next one is get that jab out there, make sure he is moving in different directions, changing height as well, and using that right hand not only to land shots but to set them up as well, because what Deontay Wilder can do is bait Tyson Fury into thinking he's going to throw it, then maybe lead in with a hook or something like that. Make sure that he's not predictable, because Tyson Fury sussed out Deontay Wilder in the 12th round of their first fight. Deontay Wilder thought he was going to be facing the same Tyson Fury, but he didn't. He was facing a completely different one that comes forward, one who is strong, powerful, surprisingly so, for Deontay Wilder. And before they both stepped in the ring with one another, Tyson Fury knew Deontay Wilder, everything. He knew what punches he was going to pick. He knew what he was going to do. Deontay Wilder did not in the case of Tyson Fury. He didn't know what he was going to do. He believed he was getting the same at Tyson Fury as he got the first time, but it wasn't that at all. The most important thing for Deontay Wilder in this next fight is to be different from the second one, because Tyson Fury has his number. So what Deontay Wilder needs to do is not change everything, but make some subtle adjustments, because in the sport of boxing, it often is fine margins. Even in a fight that is conclusive as Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder 2, it still can come down to fine margins, such as changing your direction when you move backwards. Make sure you vary your shots and creating angles. It sounds easy to do outside of the ring. It's much more difficult when you are in there with someone like Tyson Fury. This is going to be the toughest fight of Deontay Wilder's career, not just physically, but mentally also. He's going to have a lot to deal with in the build-up to this fight. So it's fine now to be in the best shape of your career, but is he going to be in the best shape mentally and physically on December 19th? He needs to be a lot better than he was on February 22nd, because Tyson Fury had control over Deontay Wilder. Tyson Fury wasn't just controlling what he was doing, he was controlling what Deontay Wilder was doing also with his own game plan. And that's not easy to do from Tyson Fury, but he done it. And Tyson Fury does have this labelled herky-jerky style, but ultimately that is to get a reaction from Deontay Wilder, to force him back, to make him think something is coming when it is not. Then something else comes when Deontay Wilder sets his feet again. So what Tyson Fury is doing is forcing Deontay Wilder back by herky-jerky style. And then as soon as Deontay Wilder has gone back and has set his feet, that is when the punches actually come, not when he is going backwards. So that causes more of an effect on Deontay Wilder, because if the punches landed when he was going back, then the punches wouldn't have as much as an effect as if his feet are stationary and he is not going backwards. So that is one thing Deontay Wilder needs to do. When Tyson Fury has that herky-jerky style double feint and forces a reaction from Deontay Wilder, what he needs to do is make sure he commits. That is the one thing Deontay Wilder needed to do, and the one thing he should have learned from the first fight. Guys, anyway, what are your thoughts on this? Make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments below, leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you are new. Thanks guys.